Hi, everybody. Welcome, welcome. Just came back to the house from doing the Saturday activations in the park. I do live shamanic meditations, shamanic activations in a park here in LA. And it's a beautiful, beautiful experience where we get to sit in the multidimensional reality together and we move energy and we help heal energy. Um, and whoever just popped on here, welcome on board. The We always know that there are people coming on board, and some people are here to join in, and some people are just here to see what's going on and what we're talking about. Now, tayo, mahiko toyo. Oho tayo. Now, so for a moment, just take a breather. Sit into your inner space. Sit into yourself. No yo 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 dai yo. As we activate these frequencies and these teachings inside of our body, we gain access to a deeper level of understanding and of who and what we are. So as we gain that access, we also grow in power and we grow in understanding of what the world is like and what you are like in the world, right? So a big part of this healing work, when I say light workers unite, which is the theme of today's um, talk, this YouTube live is light workers unite. When I say that, it is based in the idea that you have heard of a healing journey, that you are on your healing journey already, or that you're curious and to see what it's about. There is a huge awakening happening right now. There's a mass awakening going on in our world, and some of that, hang on a second here, some of that is like a big what you call it, it's through, so the world is going through a dark night of the soul. And when we, from a light worker perspective, are looking at what's going on in the world, we can see that the same energy that was here in the 1930s in Germany is activated now in humans in 2020, 21, 22, here in all over the world. And what's kind of fascinating is to see that many people who are carrying out the, call it evil, because most of the time when people bully people, most of the time when we're coercing people, most of the time when we are trying to force people or threaten people in any way, shape, or form, we are bullies. We are using pretty dark, evil forces. And when we are when we're saying, if you don't do this, you're going to lose your job, we're threatening the livelihood of people. We're threatening what's the most closest to their hearts. And it's a very much deeper than I think most of us kind of maybe understand. Like, as I sit with it a little more, I can see deeper and deeper how nefarious that is, right? Like, we are programmed since childhood. The Matrix is programming us to be afraid, and to, if we lose our jobs, that's the biggest security we have. And as long as I have a job, I'm a good person. I'm a well-meaning, good participant in society. And then when they threaten to take your job away from you unless you get this certain kind of injection, certain kind of jab, then you are not a good enough person, right? So it's a pretty nefarious tactic to get people to take this jab. And I'm not really here to tell you that you can't take the jab. I'm here to tell you that you should have the freedom of choice. I'm here to tell you that you should, without coercion, have the grown up respectability to make your own choices without anybody telling you exactly what to do every step of the way. That's the basically what we thought until the last few years. That's what we thought was the privilege of living in a, what we call the Western world. Of course, it's modern society is all across the globe now. It's not just in the West. But what we call the Western world, we call it the free world, right? And we thought that freedom meant that you, as a grown up individual, have rights, that you can do and choose what you want to do with yourself, with your body, as long as you don't hurt other people or commit a crime, right? Steal or, and stuff like that. Of course, we now see that unless you take this injection, you aren't like other people. And what is being created is a very nefarious energy. It's very, very dark, right? Now, if you look at this, if we zoom out both in time and we think about like the last few hundred years and we look at future wise a few hundred years forward, we can see that we're going to, if you look at this from 2220, from 200 years, and you look back and you go, oh, 2022, 2021, something shifted. And this, it got darker on some levels of society. And on other levels, the people who sat in their light got stronger in their light. Just like if you look at what happened in the Second World War, when the Nazis got stronger and stronger, they invaded a lot of countries, right? And many countries didn't say anything until it was too late. But there were resistance movements in every country. That every country had a movement of resistance, right? Denmark, Norway, France. I mean, England wasn't invaded, so they didn't need a resistance movement. But it became very clear that those were the real heroes. The people who stood up against the Nazis were the real heroes. They sacrificed, they risked their lives, they risked their lives of their families to help other people and to stand up against what they thought was a very nefarious enemy, which in that case was Hitler and the Nazis. And Mussolini and Italy who aligned themselves with the Nazis, right? And then you have Japan, who became a partner with the Nazis as well, Nazi Germany. And for what reasons these countries are united with them, we don't know. For what reasons other countries didn't speak up against Nazi Germany until it was way too late, we also, I mean, there are people who know, of course. I don't know, but there are people who know. But when we look at the development of the Second World War and we realize that, even when, I mean, about 5 years before the war started, they put the Jewish people in ghettos. They put them out of the regular population. They made them wear stars, the Star of David. And they were not meant to live among other people. And slowly, all the Jewish-owned stores started, having the David Star on the stores. And slowly, in that case, 100 years ago, the Jewish people were being blamed for all the bad stuff in society. And over time, over maybe about 10, 15 years or so, the rhetoric of whoever, the Nazis and Hitler, of that everything was the Jewish people's fault, became very, very strong. And more people believed in it. There was also that science-based race biology, where they were measuring people's heads, where eyes were sitting and all that. And those measurements determined on what race you were. And they also were science-based at that point. Nowadays, we can pretty much laugh at it. Right? Nowadays, we're like, oh my God, did they determine somebody's intelligence on how wide their eyes were, how deep or big the nose were, and where the cheekbones were, and what the size and squareness of the jaw? That would determine intelligence, and what race you were, and how important it was what race you were. Now, when we look at that as an example, we can start to see that was a slow indoctrination of an us and them thinking, and maybe not even that slow. I don't know. I wasn't there, right? But we can see that the Jewish population got the blame for almost everything. Now, there was, of course, other groups too that were being blamed. The gypsies were being blamed for a lot of things. The homosexuals, the different races and different behaviors were um, being blamed for a lot of the hard time, like for the financial crisis in 1929, 1930, um, and all of that led into a very dark period, right? And I thought growing up that hopefully, may it never happen again, right? Um, because the Second World War was so big in its nefarious, like institutionalized killing. And most likely that's the first time we've seen it that way, as far as we know, right, in modern history. And if we look at what's going on now, we are almost in that same space, except we're not killing anybody knowingly. Now we do know, and this is the sadder part and the scarier part. And I'm not here to again tell you not to get a jab, but I am here that to tell us that I think there's a lot of information that's not getting out there. And of course, that's nothing new to you. You're listening to this. You wouldn't listen to this if you weren't feeling that way. But my mom passed away within weeks after she had her third shot, and she was in bad health. Yes, and would she have died anyway? Maybe. But is it strange that she died within 2 weeks after she had her jab? Yes. Her health declined like that, like the doctors just said no. Her organs are shutting down, and we don't know what's going on with her. And then she died. She couldn't breathe, and then she died. And it's of course, it's heartbreaking, and I can talk about it now because it's been a month, and I'm here with you. But of course, I miss her all the time, and I wish she hadn't died now. And at the same time, she had bad health. She would have passed at some point, which we all will, right? But it's still a little bit sad when you know that there could be a lot of people who have passed from side effects of the said jab. And, that isn't being talked about at all in the media. But there are thousands and thousands and thousands of doctors out there signing documents, signing treaties, signing statements that are saying we shouldn't be doing this. But of course, they're not getting any room in the regular media because it doesn't follow the narrative. The narrative is that you got to get jabbed, otherwise you will die from the illness. And of course, I had it 3 weeks ago. I'm I'm fine now. Like it took 2 weeks to get over the tiredness, and I was still coughing up a lot of phlegm. And there's a little bit left, but very, very little. And when I really think about it, like, yeah, sure, it was a little hard, yes. But was it that much worse than other colds or flus or other illnesses I've had in my life? Not really. It was bad, but it wasn't worse. And I think we have missed that. Most of us who get a flu, we have lingering side effects for weeks afterwards. We had that years ago. We had that 20 years ago. It's not that new. There are some things with COVID, with the thing that, which I can't say because I'll probably be taken down. There are some things that are, of course, harder to deal with than others, but every disease has something that's harder than others. And the way the media has portrayed this, the way it's been portrayed in society, has been so hard and so harsh. And anybody who criticizes it gets taken down, right? If I said the words, I'd be censored. And you know, it's a pretty that's a pretty dark development. That's a pretty negative expression in our world. So when we talk about the dark night of the soul for the universe, for society, we can start to see that in some way, because dark night of the soul, right? If you look at your own dark night of the soul, what is the dark night of the soul? It's usually, oh, there you go. Thank you, Kurpona. Sending my condolences, King. And yes, I worry about my cousin who took the vaccine. Yeah. Well, that's the thing, right, Kurpona? Like, or Q3. I'm not sure. I'm sorry that I don't know how to say your name. But yes, it is worrying that people taking these jabs are getting as sick and going to the hospital at least at the same rate as the people who didn't. And that's not what the media says, right? But there's enough evidence around me and everybody I know who where it's like, yeah, no, there's a lot of people on who get the illness and who have to go to the hospital, regardless of jab status. So, it's and that they're still pushing for it so hard in some of these countries, like this country, right, where I'm at. While in other countries in Europe, they just let go of all restrictions. They just said, nope, we're not going to try and stop it anymore. Everybody needs to get it. So we get immunity. And that's how we're going to get rid of it. That's what they said. While other countries are still, you're going to lose your job, you're going to lose your livelihood if you don't get the injection. It's so nefarious. That part is really dark. Now, when we're talking about Dark Night of the Soul, when you go through your own personal dark night of the soul, a lot of times it's our worst behaviors that are activated. In the healing world, we talk a lot about triggers, right? And if you're familiar with healing, then this is not going to be new. Oh, Bella, thank you, Bella. Thank you, thank you. That's wonderful. I'll call you Bella. So when we see our in the healing world, we talk about triggers, right? And a trigger, I had a lot of triggers, and I've worked on a lot of it by healing, right? So when we heal ourselves deep down inside, which is a deep spiritual journey, we end up releasing the need to protect ourselves. A trigger is a reaction that we have to try to protect us from feeling feelings that have hurt us before. So, in a very simple way to look at it, if you as a child got smacked over the head really hard by, let's say, your dad, right? And then you get older and that hurt and you got scared. Well, if somebody, when you are, 20 years later, you're 25, you're 30 years old, and you see somebody lift their hand, well, you're going to react like you did when you were 5, and your body is going to think that it's going to be the same feeling that you had when you were 5 and your dad smacked you over the head. You think it's going to happen again. And that thing goes for all kinds of feelings, right? So I was very, very jealous in my life until I started healing more, right? Like really healing. And when I sat in my jealousy, everything could trigger me. If I was with a girlfriend and she looked away, I'm like, who was that? Or if a guy would come back over and over, I would always ask, I would be very inquisitive, and I would be controlling, and I would be triggered, because I grew up in a setting where infidelity was pretty common and it was hurtful, and there was a lot of violence around that. So for my programming, what I grew up with, it was like, well, infidelity causes pain, causes suffering, causes a lot of problems. So I didn't want that in my life. Well, whenever you don't want something in your life, usually we keep looking for it, right? So I kept on the lookout so it wouldn't happen. Well, what happens to things we look for? We find them. So we're enforcing these behaviors, right? Now back to triggers. Triggers is something that when I get triggered into jealousy, I'm expecting that bad feeling that I had as a kid, and I'm going in to try and stop the person from doing whatever I think is going to hurt my feelings. And of course, we get lost in that world of triggers, and then suddenly we live in a world where, yeah, you can't trust those people, you can't trust that gender, you can't, all goods are bad, or all guys are douchebags, and all girls are this and that, right? But in reality, it's only our perception that we keep reinforcing by how we're living, and that we are not breaking the cycle. We're not breaking the mantra inside of us. When we're able to break the mantra, and we're able to see, hang on, the problem is within me. The trigger is in me. The pain, the suffering is in my journey, in my life. Then I can start to heal it. Well, in order for us to find what we need to heal, we go through the dark night of the soul so we can see what it is. The poet Rumi, he writes, the wound is where the light enters you, right? So the suffering is what breaks you open. The prophet Khalil Gibran, he wrote, pain breaks the shell that surrounds your mind. So in a way, or your heart as well, right? In a way, we can say that the pain we go through when we go through the dark night of the soul, which is when all the different expressions of our trauma and triggers are coming out. So when I was in my most triggered state and I thought every single guy was trying to be with this girl that I had and that she was not being faithful and whatever it was, that became a high stressed state in my body and I was trying to protect it all the time. Well, that's very much a dark night of the soul experience. And it always ends dark. It always ends badly. I pushed people away all the time. Every single woman I dated, I kept pushing away with my control issues and my jealousy. And as and that's this thing that we end up repeating the patterns that we're trying to avoid. We because we're looking for them. The same thing is going on in the world right now as a whole. You look at the global consciousness, which then, if you look at people who step out of the matrix, people like me and other people who speak like this with a certain level of truth, a certain level of heart, a certain level of centeredness and energetic light, we are able to not buy into the matrix. But the matrix, which is sort of in a way run on a lot of triggers, right? They're trying, because fear is a big part of the matrix. When you watch the news, almost every single word out there is based in some sort of fear. You're supposed to be afraid of this. You're supposed to be afraid of that. You're supposed to be afraid of other races, no matter what race you are, right? Other races want you to be hurt. And you're supposed to be afraid of this or that or this or that. And yes, it's of course real because we're creating it. We keep recreating it. The more we experience it, or the more we see the news and we feed ourselves with it, the more we see it everywhere we go. And it does become, on a very deep level, a self-fulfilling prophecy, where, well, just like in my case, when I was dating somebody and I started thinking that, or my jealousy started kicking in, I started putting energy towards their bad behaviors. Well, that made their bad behaviors stronger. That made them grow. Just like if I'm with somebody who would tell me, "Don't be so angry, Marcus." Over time, I'm not fucking angry. And I would just be more angry because when they don't want me to be angry, right, that enforces the behavior. Shamanically speaking, we are looking at, as from a shaman's point of view, we would look at when we see a behavior we don't like, but we keep looking for it, we are enforcing that behavior. And much of that is going on in our regular world today. There's a sense of control in the matrix and in the media. And us humans, we have, through thinking that what we call Newtonian science, 3D world, we can control every single aspect of what's going on in our world. We think that if I am in a certain mind state and if I use certain sprays and I use everything, I can keep all bacteria away from me. And I can keep this air free from particles and that's a lie. We can't keep anything 100% clear of anything because that's not the world we live in. Control is an illusion of the mind and the ego. Control is an illusion based in fear, right? It's based in the idea that if I only defend my space deeply enough, nobody can come in here. If I can protect this cave from the mountain lion, from the bear, then the bear won't come in here. Well, of course, it won't come in if I can protect from a bear. But when it comes down to like deeper parts of our reality, we don't even see that. There you go. Let's see. Dark night of the soul consists of 3 phases, it seems like. Betrayal, healing, and then resurrection. That's how you overcome it. Yes, absolutely. I do kind of see, Bella, thank you for that. Thank you. I kind of see the dark night of the soul a little bit like it's a very personal journey, even though we can see certain, uh, similarities between all of our journeys. But most of the time with the dark night of the soul, what comes out is, at least my experience says, that it's your individual programming that you grew up in. You grew up with a certain life setting, a certain set of parents or non-parents, and you grew up in a certain setting and with certain triggers and traumas that happen in your life. And that becomes a part of your mental programming. It becomes part of how you see the world. And because your upbringing and your energetic imprint and your energetic inheritance or lineage from your ancestors is very unique to your life, your dark night of the soul also becomes very unique to you. Because not one person's jealousy is exactly the same. Not one person's energy content is exactly the same. So our dark night of the soul also expresses itself differently. For some people, it might be a psychotic break and they're screaming in the streets. Some people, it can be hiding in the corner of their room in depression and not knowing why nobody loves them. For some people, it could be, I'm going to have to jump off the roof, or I'm going to hang myself, or like like it can express itself in different ways. So yeah, dark night of the soul is a big deal. I think our world is going through it right now, and hopefully we can all awaken from it. There is absolutely a mass awakening going on at the same time as the darkness of the world is sort of overpowering or overtowering us, right? We can feel how in some ways there's been the control from the matrix, from the media and from the governments and from the large corporations have kind of tried to take over our world, and they're doing it through the jab, right? And that's why personally, when I started seeing the propaganda and I started seeing that you're not allowed to question this, and then I started seeing how they took down the videos, that was to me like, oh no, you guys are really, really, really bad. Because censorship, no matter how you turn it around, censorship is very dangerous, like very dangerous. You're trying to control what's going on within people, what they're thinking, and how they're thinking. You're doing it by removing information that could help them. I'm over here trying not to feel crazy. Thank you for breaking it down. This makes me feel safe now. That's beautiful, Bella. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you so much for sharing that. That's beautiful. I mean, that is the goal of these YouTube lives, and actually on pretty much everything I do online and in my world, because I consider myself one of the light workers, which doesn't mean we're different than anybody. We just are aware that the insides is a light. There's light energy inside of me, in my heart. This is light energy. It's a light energy in you. That's healing power. That's life energy. And as we see it in ourselves and we begin to heal ourselves, we also start to connect with other light workers, and we can support and help each other feel more solid and more grounded. And personally, I believe that's our job here. Because as we ground ourselves, right, that's part of coming back to nature, part of coming back to Earth Mother is to begin to ground ourselves. And when we do, we find life. We find real life, and we find a sense of deep reality. A sense of reality that's not present if you only watch the media 24/7. If you only listen, even, and that's the other thing, is that if we only listen to conspiracy theories and to negativity, well, because it can become negative, right? Even what I'm speaking about, if you were to feed your brain 24/7 even what I'm speaking about, it'd be a little hard. Because what we want to do, what the real solution is, I'm talking about the awareness around the conspiracy, awareness around the propaganda, awareness around the injections, to rob us of our power, to not create more health, to not create more freedom. I'm talking about that so we can see that. Thank you, Bella. Thank you. I receive and I send it right back to you. Love and light. Thank you. When we are receiving or sitting in the light, right, we can sit stronger in our inner stance. And when you're in your inner stance and you know that that's light, you can help others to reach their light as well. It's like we're a little bit igniting each other on the way. And one of the things that that I want us to do, if possible, it's not easy, because when we look at the dark night of the soul that's going on in the world right now, when we look at how people are super afraid of any version of the illness that's coming out, right? And they're so afraid of it, so they're willing to put their children through a, this is, it's a test. The jab is still in a test phase, right? It's still experimental. And when people are willing to put their children as objects in an experimental testing, it is a very big sign of fear, right? Fear is running our life, our society. That is a big part of the dark night of the soul. So when we, as people who have had our own dark night of the soul, and we have learned how to step into our own light, and we can step into and feel, okay, so I'm right here. And which means we are not here to judge the heck out of what we want to, whatever we want to call the establishment. If we want to call, like in the 1930s, it was the Nazis. Now it's the narrative from the media and from the governments and from the corporations, and they're all trying to take full control over our minds. We're not here to judge either the people who fell for the control, because they are stuck in the matrix. In a way, they cannot help it. They are raised that way. I was stuck in the matrix for so long, and I think a lot of us have been. And in a way, I feel like Morpheus handing out the red pill and the blue pill. And in that way, when we choose to awaken, when we choose to step out of the narrative that we have been force-fed our whole lives, we don't want to come back and judge the people who are still there. We want to come from a place of love and from a place of light, for two reasons. One is, if I was arguing with somebody and suddenly I would recognize and realize, oh shit, I was wrong. Oh darn, I did I'm wrong. I was wrong about this candle. It's not made out of wood. It's made out of aluminum. I'm Swedish, by the way. If you wonder about my accent, it's because I'm Swedish, but I live in America. I'm wrong about the candle. So here's me and this person have been arguing about the candle. And I'm realizing I'm wrong. I'm like, oh shoot, I'm wrong. How would I like the other person to treat me? Would I like them to go, see, I told you, you were stupid. You're so stupid. You were so wrong. This is crazy. Or would I, because that wouldn't make me feel very good, right? That would actually make me rebel even more. Then I would be like, no, the candle is really made of wood. I wouldn't give up, right? But if somebody comes at me and when I say, oh, shoot, and they see on me that, uh-oh, he's realizing the candle is not made out of wood, then, and they go, you know what? I hear you, man. And I kind of knew that this candle was made out of aluminum, but I understand you were mistaken. It can happen to anyone. When all the people who are for the injections, one day there'll be enough evidence that maybe it didn't turn out as good as we have been told. When that awakening is happening, we don't want to sit there and point fingers and go, ha ha ha, I'm so much better than you. Because for their sake, it's not going to be easy. It's not an easy transition. But for your own sake, when you start to be and act, so we have bullies over here, and then we start to go in and we act like bullies to get back at the bullies. Their vibration, when you sit in your light, your vibration is high. When you don't sit in your light, when you sit in fear, your vibration is low. It's survival based. It's like, oh my God, I'm gonna survive. And when you sit in your light, you're in center and you're like, ma. Well, if you start to throw trash at these people and you start going, I hate you, you guys are bad, you guys are bad, you guys are bad, in order to meet them, you're not going to raise their vibration, you're lowering your vibration. It's a lot. Let's say you have a partnership, you're in love with somebody, you've been together for 10 years. Suddenly, this person goes into their dark night of the soul, which happens all the time in relationships. The relationship itself might do it, or people in the relationships, they do it, right? Well, so one person may either they become unfaithful, or maybe they start to drink a lot or use drugs or whatever. So they start, kind of lowering how they feel about themselves and what they do, because whenever people get addicted to drugs or alcohol, we end up doing things that we're not proud of. We are feeling shitty all the time, and we start lowering our vibration. Now, the person who is still not in the dark night of the soul, maybe they've gone through it before, if they go down and say, okay, I'm going to use heroin with my partner because I want to be like them, well, that's only going to lower us, right? But if you say, I'm going to sit in my light, and when this person is ready to see the light, I'm going to hold up that torch so they can come and see it. They can find their way back home. That's why we sit in the heart peace. We sit in our inner love. We find it in meditation. We find it when we're healing. We find it as we, and even through each other, right? It's a beautiful part of this process. As you raise your vibration. Now, the reason why you're watching this live right now is because you somehow connected to this message. You connected to something that's going on in this video. You felt, uh-oh, I need to hear this. There's something in his voice. There's something in how this looks or makes me feel that I want to hear. This is what I refer to it as the tribe. From the shamanic perspective that I'm in, there's a tribe of kings and queens of old that are working in the unseen. We can call it anything we want, but for me, that's what I have experienced. So that's why I call it that. And that's my spiritual path. And that's what guides our intuition to find certain people in our lives and to align with certain frequencies and vibrations that are going on in the universe. And I find it beautiful. I find it lovely that people that we've never met, the people who are watching this live right now, we haven't met as far as I know, but it's beautiful to see how we're connecting through this ether. And we're meeting in a very like-minded energy. As I can sit in my higher vibration and you sit in your higher vibration, you realize, oh yeah, we're in alignment. There's also something called entrainment. That's when you can feel a feeling that is the same feeling I'm feeling. And that's usually why, the biggest teachers, either you talk about John Lennon, you talk about Dr. Martin Luther King, Gandhi, or Jesus, they all said at one point or another, love is the answer. Because when we are in entrainment, when we are vibrating on the highest frequency of love in the heart, and you sit with other people who vibrate in that frequency, you're like, holy God, this is a beautiful movement. This is beautiful. What a feeling I'm getting from this. What if we can strengthen this sense in our body to other people? What if we can strengthen the idea that we don't need anything from the outside to make ourselves feel better and make ourselves stronger? What if we need to sit? I mean, you could say, in a way, you can say sunlight is from the outside, but you can sit in nature and you can tank energy and you strengthen your body, your immune system, your life. We don't. What if we can learn that we can sit in our highest frequency? Thank you, Bella. Thank you. I'm grateful that you are a part of this tribe. Yes. Yes, my dear. Thank you. Now, dark night of the soul of humanity. So what happens in the dark night of the soul is that usually it gets really dark. I wanted to say that too, Bella, that even though it's betrayal, healing, and resurrection, that's kind of, in a way, we can say, like an overall scheme of how it happens, right? But we can also see how each journey is individual, and how each time that the world goes into the darker movements of itself, of humanity, when humanity run to darker, harder times, such as in the medieval times, we had the Inquisition, when the Catholic Church tried to convince everybody that if you don't believe in Jesus Christ and the Pope and the Catholic Church the way we do, we're going to kill you or we're going to torture you until you agree. Yeah, no, it's true. That's also very true. So when we look at the Inquisition, we look at the dark medieval ages, right? And then we can look at the Roman times that were in many ways pretty dark as well, because you had to do what the Romans told you to do, because they wanted to invade everywhere. And you can look at many different times when humanity has kind of da- dived down into darkness. We plunged into darkness. We did it in World War II. We did it in World War One. We did it, through different big wars. And those are not the only times when millions and millions of people have been killed. In Russia during Stalin, there was like I think 20 or 30 million people who died either from intentional starvation or in their gulag work camps. And then you have, or they were just straight up killed because they were people who had knowledge, people who were college professors, teachers, and other things like that. And they wanted to get rid of the intelligentsia, they call it, the intelligent people who could question the system. They wanted to get rid of that. And in some ways, by being programmed by television, we have all been dumbed down. Our attention span has become very short. We are very shallow in our conversations and in our awareness, right? The sports is a beautiful distraction, so we don't have to feel like we're wasting our time. Um, Going and get drunk in a bar somewhere is a beautiful way so we can feel we don't waste our time. We don't have to ask the tough questions about our own existence. It's lowering our vibration. So when the dark night of the soul happens, it usually gets pretty darn dark before it gets brighter. And the only reason is why it has to get so dark is that we have to face, oh shoot, we screwed up. We have to face the consequences of our actions. And sometimes that's really, really hard. And sometimes we have gotten so depressed or whatever it is that we don't see a way out. And quite a lot of times people end up ending their lives instead of actually seeing a way out and rising up, right? And part of why I believe that the universe, they say that, God and nature abhor suicide. And many religions say that it's the worst crime you can do. Part of why I believe I don't think it's the worst crime you can do, but I think it is something that spiritually and energetically, you didn't learn your lesson. You didn't raise your vibration in this lifetime. You got stuck in a painful cycle. And I'm not saying that it's not hard to be suicidal or depressed. I've been there many times. But when we are in that state, we aren't really learning our lessons. We're very, very triggered. We're very much in our dark night of the soul, and we're very triggered. But it's not easy if we don't find our way through it. If we stop and we end it instead, we didn't learn how to raise the vibration. That means the universe didn't learn how to raise its vibration. It means we have to come back and help it again to raise the vibration. So that's why when you sit in your trauma and you sit in your healing, you raise your inner vibration. And because everything is connected, because the universe is connected as a whole, we're all connected, regardless if we want to or not. Much like an invisible Wi-Fi. Well, Wi-Fi is invisible, right? But the energy of Wi-Fi, if we look at that, humans are also connected in a field of energy. If you raise your vibration, well, the field of energy is also being raised. If you don't, the field doesn't get its rate, like it doesn't get raised, right? It doesn't understand the lessons you were here to learn. So the dark night of the soul of humankind is happening at the moment. We're watching it play out in real time. The reason to also, we just said it, right? Like the way you can see, because you and I can see through it, because of our life experience, because of how we grew up, because of our inner programming, we could see through it. My whole life, I knew I was supposed to be part of some sort of resistance. I couldn't imagine that it would come out this way. But here we are. And when we look at sitting in our inner light and then being the torch for other people. So once they know they're in the dark, because sometimes we don't even know we're in the dark, but once they know it, then they can start looking for the light. So if you and I can sit in our highest vibration, it becomes a lot easier to hold the light, right? Now, I have been going on here for a while. If you have any thoughts or questions here that you want to share or you want to utter or just come out with, feel free to do so. And if nothing else comes up, I think we're going to get close to ending tonight. I try to do these at the moment, it's every Saturday at 7 p.m., but it might also become every Friday. I haven't really decided on the schedule because my life is changing a little bit. So all my scheduling is up and down right now. But I want to come on here as often as I can because I love this space. I love that we can express things. And I love the idea of Lightworkers Unite. I love the idea that we're here to support each other, that we're here to help and hold each other up. And if anybody wants to find me on the other social media, it's Healing with Marcus on Instagram or on Facebook, and or my website, right? It's healingwithmarcus.com. Um, can always reach out to me. I'm very happy to connect. I'm very, very happy to talk to people. I think it's how we help each other grow and learn and yay, raise the vibration. All right, everybody. Thanks for sitting here in this light. Thanks for these moments. Thanks for sitting in your light. Thanks for raising your inner vibration in your heart. I wish you a beautiful evening or day wherever you are. Thank you, Bella. Thank you, everybody else who were on here. Namaste and aho. Thank you and bye.